Well, hello, my lovelies. It is Countess, and I am here with another video presentation for you guys, and I hope you find it interesting and illuminating, darling. What I want to go over today, guys, and we're going to be looking at some different sources online, and we're also going to go through the memoirs. And I'm focusing on the name of the band, the Beatles. What in the world made them decide that that was a great name to name their band? Like, I would really like to know. And what is the symbology of the beetle? So we're going to go through it, guys, and if any of you already kind of know this information, feel free to skip this video. But for those who do not understand what the significance of the beetle is, let's go down that rabbit hole together. All right, guys, so we're going to start off with what the beetle is, the Scarab beetle. So basically, it's a type of dung beetle that belongs to the family Scarabaeoidea. There's my horrible Latin pronunciation for the day. You would never guess that I took 4 semesters of it in college. It all just sort of left me, except for like the basic knowledge of, I'm so horrible with the conjugations and all of that stuff. So, but I know the basic like root meaning of a lot of Latin words. I cannot conjugate them properly. So apologies, guys, but I think that's the only bit of Latin I have to read. Okay, so what was the dung beetle? The dung beetle was a beetle in ancient Egypt that lays her eggs in a perfectly rolled dung ball, and then she moves the ball to a secure location, and then she buries it underground. And then, after she buries it, a bunch of little beetles, emerge from the underground, basically. And so her babies are able to feed off of the dung, and that is how they grow, and that is how they hatch and rise up from pretty much nowhere, right? So it's the symbology, guys. It is the emergence from the underground. It is a metaphor of initiation into the Egyptian mysteries. The beetle is a symbol of royalty. It's a symbol of protection. And it is, most importantly, a symbol of resurrection. And we know in memoirs at the very, very last bit of it, let me put my book to it, and I will tell you what page. It's like right towards the end of the book, after the talent contest and where the notes begin. It is on page 666. So fitting, because with Billy, it's all 6s. So on this page, most importantly, love everyone. And then he says, all the best to those who love my memoirs, and to those who don't, with love from your Scarab, the gold-winged beetle. Yes. Billy is the winged beetle. And so what in the world does that mean, right? Well, let's go through it. We're going to go through just kind of the basic, and then we'll get to the winged beetle part. But basically, you know, Egyptians associated the dung beetle with the god of the early morning sun, and that god's name is Capri. Capri. I'm just going to say Capri. And Capri was depicted in hieroglyphics as a scarab beetle. So that's how, you know, we know that it was used as a symbol for the early morning sun god. But Capri was believed to roll the disk of the morning sun over the eastern horizon. And at daybreak, just like the beetle rolls her disk of dung, you know, Capri keeps moving it from the eastern horizon to the western horizon. The beetle is also looked at as an incarnation of autumn, Lord of the universe and creation. So because, you know, when the beetle puts her dung ball full of baby eggs underground, when they emerge, it's like they emerge from nothingness. So life out of nothing. And that's only something that Autumn could do. He is the cosmic Lord of creation, basically. And so the Egyptians associate the beetle with Capri and Autumn. And then the last Egyptian god that they associate the scarab with is Ra. And Ra, of course, is the main Egyptian sun god. He's the manifestation of the sun. He is what gives warmth. He is what gives life to people on earth. And Ra is responsible for, just like Capri, moving the disk from the horizon at daybreak. Then Ra is the god that is responsible for moving the sun across the sky from east to west on a daily basis. So there, Ra signifies the beetle, and the sun signifies dung. So do you guys kind of get that like picture in your head of a beetle rolled up her dung ball and moved it to a secure location, and, you know, makes a hole for it, puts it underground, and then the little baby beetles feed off of the dung, and they get bigger and stronger until they're ready to hatch, and thus more life is created. So you can see how they associated the dung beetle with the gods. You know, they were a representation of the power of the gods. The scarab was a sacred and divine insect. Capri was also known as the quote-unquote beetle god. Egyptians likened the beetles to particular gods, and they worshipped the beetles because they revealed so much about the universe and the spirit world. So that is why the Egyptians worshipped them. So we're going to go through kind of what the scarab, you know, along with representing the gods Capri, Autumn, and Ra, the symbology of the scarab beetle. So, you know, number one, we're looking at a symbol of renewal and rebirth. You know, they sprang out of dead manner. So, what does that sound like, guys? The transmigration of the soul. The scarab beetle also symbolizes the never-ending life cycle, and that ties into the renewal and rebirth. You know, you're constantly being reincarnated with a different physical body, but your spirit lives on, right? So that can be the never-ending life cycle. We can, you know, compare that to Paul and Billy. You know, Paul's transmigration, the soul of Paul transmigrated into Billy to keep living on, and Billy is a manifestation of Paul because of it. Woo! Yes. So also, you know, the beetles, you know, symbolized transformation, pushing the heaviest and darkest matter to a suitable location without much of a struggle. They portray the ability to survive, to adapt, and to transform, surrendering to the change, and they start over again. What does that sound like, you guys? That sounds like the Beatles, right? They had to surrender to the change. They had to surrender to the death of their bandmate. And then they had to start over, you know, and pushing the heaviest and darkest matter into a suitable location so that you can create. And again, it's just the never-ending cycle. The scarab beetle gave ancient Egyptians hope that there is life after death. You know, dung was equated to death by the Egyptians. So basically, the beetle, you know, emerges from the dung, emerges from death, and lives. So there is an idea of life after death, tying into the transformation and the transmigration of the soul, the reincarnation, right? And then also in that, immortality is brought to the forefront. And that can be represented by like burying the young in the dung, death, but the new beetles emerge. So, woo, there's a lot of symbolism right there. But you know what? You know, yes, so they were named the Beatles before Paul's death. But there is a reason because of that. They also represent, and I'll get into that here in a minute. They also represent protection. So you will see, you know, they would make jewelry that had the scarabs. They thought that they were magical and that they warded off evil and misfortune. They buried their mummies with protective scarab amulets so that they would have a safe transition into the afterlife. So now, guys, you see that the beetles are living reminders of survival, of adaptability, of death and rebirth. You know, these are very heavy metaphysical ideas that are being manifested from this tiny little insect. And I find that highly fascinating because, yeah, you know, I just think it's so cool that they were so perceptive, that they, you know, saw a creation from the gods that represented the gods on earth. And so then we get to the winged scarab beetle, so the winged scarab, they would take a, scarab, like to make an amulet, right? Or a necklace or something. They would take the form and make the form of a scarab, but they would attach the wings of birds to the scarab. So the scarab does not have wings. The wings were put on as a symbol that they would be a connector, sort of, to the solar deity Capri, that connecting to the sun god guaranteed rebirth. So for the dead to be assured of a smooth, transition into the quote-unquote other world, they would supply the mummies with these amulets. And I think that this is very interesting and very, just very cool. The scarab amulets were reserved to aid the mummy's transition into the spirit world. Egyptians buried their mummies, and then heart scarabs were sewn into the wrappings of the mummies, and they were placed over the heart, chest, or the throat of a mummy. The heart was considered the seat of a person's memory, emotion, and intelligence. And the heart was usually weighed for purity by Anubis. Anubis is the lord of the underworld, son of Osiris. Or not lord of the underworld, I'm sorry, Osiris is lord of the underworld. But Anubis was his son, and he was one of the, I don't know what you would call him, just another figure in the underworld that executes his father's will. But the heart scarab would have inscriptions from the Egyptian Book of the Dead as a means to plead with the heart, to not betray the deceased when it comes to Judgment Day. They would put the amulet on, these areas, the heart, the throat, or the chest, to symbolize the heart's purity, and how Osiris and Anubis, they weigh the purity and decide, who gets reincarnated or who suffers in eternity. It was a symbol that they believed magically invoked protection. So I find that highly interesting. And so, yeah, the Beatles were named the Beatles far before Paul died in 1966. However, the Beatles, coming from the Tavistock Institute, formulated and contrived to change the world, basically, to change the movement of the culture, to influence the culture, so that there would be this much needed, according to them, this much needed shift into the age of Aquarius from the age of Pisces. So the Beatles were actually the representation of the old world transforming into the new world. Capri was a god that stood, was said to have challenged authority, who was a rebel, and so appropriate with those who were at the forefront of the counterculture movement in the 1960s. And I found a fun fact on one of a Beatles forum that the Beatles use the word sun or sunshine in 17 songs of theirs. And then 1 plus 7 equals 8. 8 is the number of balance, of infinity, of harmony. I just find this super interesting. So you could say that the Beatles were an incarnation of Capri. They were there to move this ball of dung, the old world, the old customs, the old morals, the old Christian-based society, bury it, and let the world feed off of the dung so that we would emerge with a new mindset and have a universal cosmic mindset to shift the culture, to shift the paradigm. And I just want to look at a couple of footnotes in the memoirs that kind of talk about the Beatles' connection to the ancient Egyptian gods. And this all goes back to the mystery schools. It goes back to the Freemasons, the Knights Templar. This goes back centuries, and yeah, the Beatles were formed to change the mindset of people. So let's take a look at page 37. So 3 plus 7 equals 10, and then you get 1 plus 0 equals 1. So 1 is basically what it stands for. It is the whole, the one, and that's what when you get rid of duality, you arrive at the one, right? Okay, so let's take a look at the footnote here. While some fans claim that William or Paul is a reincarnation of Antonio Vivaldi, the inner circle see them as Horus and Osiris. Horus is Osiris's son, who became a blend of the two. William is Horus as, quote-unquote, Paul. Quote-unquote, Paul in this sense refers to a soul transmigrated combination of William and Paul, and the ancient entities that migrated to them before and after Paul's death. Although most scholars agree that Osiris was Enki's grandson through Marduk, who is Ra. Others postulate that the Egyptian sibling gods Osiris, Seth, and Isis are neither figuratively or literally the Sumerian sibling gods Enki, Enlil, and Nishursag. Again, I apologize for the mispronunciations. Don't get on my case about it. According to legend, when Set, representing or literally Enlil, killed and scattered his brother Osiris, Enki, their grieving sister consort Isis gathered what she could find of Osiris's dismembered parts. And according to the legend, Isis and Thoth used the energy of the pyramid to repair and resurrect Osiris long enough for Isis to get it on with him and conceive Horus, possibly by artificial insemination. Sure. Isis and Thoth then transferred the soul of Osiris into Horus's body. Embodying Osiris, Horus is both father and son. In another tale, Isis, much later, also resurrects the deceased Horus-Osiris body, further setting Horus, born on December 25th, or perhaps Enki, as the first Christ figure. The Sumerian figures Anu, Enki, and Enlil had no concept of a personal god, but believed in an impersonal, quote-unquote creator, similar to what the Hindu later called Brahman. Eventually, Anu, Enki, and Enlil were worshipped as pagan gods, and then appear to have become the basis for the Hindu Trimurti, the Trinity. Brahma, the creator, Vishnu, the preserver slash savior, and Shiva, the destroyer. Which I find cool, when you're thinking of the tarot, the card that is the world actually signifies Shiva's dance, cosmic dance of destruction. I think it's very cool. So Vishnu, as the teaching goes, has incarnated many times to bless mankind, partly by disrupting prevailing oppressive religions. Vishnu's 8th avatar, Krishna, came 31 centuries before Jesus. We should find an incarnation of Vishnu, figuratively or literally, in every age, including our own. In the Haiku Gita, Krishna, or Vishnu, says, I return through birth whenever goddess decays or evilness grows, to protect the good and to destroy the evil. I am born in each age. Krishna, the second member of the Hindu godhead, resembling Enki of the Sumerian godhead, parallels, some say is, Jesus the Christ, or Christos, the second member of the Christian godhead. George Harrison explains, the Greek word for Christ is Christos. Krishna and Christos is the same name. Even if not a literal incarnation of Vishnu or Enki, Paul's birth, death, and transmigration to William joins them as an Osiris Horus Christ figure. Wow, that's a lot of information to divulge, but again, think of the beetle. It's just constantly this cycle is repeated over and over again, and that's basically like what animals and insects do, right? They're creatures of habit. So of course they're going to keep recycling and reincarnating no matter what. And then let's turn the page to page 38. And of course, 3 plus 8 is 11. 11 being, it is a number that signifies power, right? Power that can get you through darkness, pushing through the darkness or the dung to reincarnate and create life. So this footnote, and I really love this song that they talk about, the song that's called This One. Oh, I love it. The video is really trippy as well. Okay. William felt less like an imposter after a couple of months when he sensed Paul's more permanent presence within him. However, based on beliefs and rituals, those who saw Paul as an avatar for Vishnu expected William to feel the indwelling, not only of Paul, but also of Enki, Osiris, Krishna, Jesus, to give a few names for he whom they considered one God. If Vishnu had embodied Paul, and if Paul then embodied William, quote-unquote Billy Shears, would become much more than the living Paul, transformed by Shiva to be far beyond some mere idol. The new, quote-unquote Paul would be God incarnate. And this is where Paulism starts, you guys. but that's for another video. When William felt the indwelling of Paul, but not of Christ, Krishna, he was troubled. Confidence reassured him that eventually he and Krishna would each enter the heart, mind, and flesh of the other. Having still not felt it, by 1988 he wrote this one. In the video, we see him with closed eyes, praying to Krishna. He says, "Did I ever open up my heart, let you look inside? If I never did, I was only waiting for a better moment that didn't come. There never could be a better moment than this one." Pausing it right there. That video is a trip, like speaking of him closing his eyes, they like have his eyes closed. I'll post a picture. His eyes are closed, but they have the makeup on the eyelids to make it look like, when he closes his eyes are open. So another symbolic little, special effect that some people probably think is just kind of cool and a little trippy, but it's like opening your third eye, right? Eyes wide shut. And you can see and you can feel the spiritual principalities that we cannot see here on this plane. Whoa, it's very, very deep. Okay, considering the many incarnations of Vishnu and of how unpleasant some of these lives have been, such as Jesus being hated and crucified, William believed that if he were Vishnu's avatar, that the soul combination would be mutually enjoyable. He sings, "What kind of magic might have worked if we had stayed calm? Couldn't I have given you a better life?" He reasoned that perhaps joining him could be Vishnu's most pleasant of all incarnations. Oh, so Billy thinks, because he has two souls dwelling in one body, that this, raises him and the incarnation. I find that quite interesting. Okay, guys, quickly, we're going to turn to page 118 in the book. Very quickly, I have read this footnote before. The elite intended to make Paul a Christ figure. Quote, "He that lives and was dead," unquote. But also the biblical beast that deceives the world, making all wonder at him and worship the image of the beast whose head had been slain and yet is. And that's from Revelation. In order to work subconsciously, to bypass conscious objection, the symbolism is too subtle to grasp without the "Paul is dead," quote unquote, context. For example, the big T in the Beatles logo secretly represents Paul's cross, replacing the cross of Jesus. And that just also wages into their war on Christianity that Billy tells us. They were made to, kind of give an oath that they would forsake their Christian upbringing and values and promote what the Illuminati wanted them to promote. So let's go over to page 294. And the numerology, and this is the beginning of the chapter called Highbrow. Note the numerology, of course, it reduces to the number 6. And let's look at the emboldened words. He says, "I do Horus. I am Ra." And the footnote says, Aleister Crowley's The Book of the Law, channeled from Iowas, along with its corresponding secret teachings, are the primary basis for the global spiritual political framework of the Aeon of Horus in the age of Aquarius. as with every new age, the soul of Horus would return embodied as a new Messiah. Like the Magi following the Star of Bethlehem, Crowley and his followers sought for the incarnations of Osiris and Horus, who would be born of the right families, in the right places, on the right dates, and with other signs, including in their bodies, such as Paul's high brow. The Illuminated are introducing Paul and William as Horus's modern incarnation. With some design variation, the Eye of Horus, or of Ra, is the eye of providence, or the all-seeing eye. In some traditions, the eye with rays is a phallic emanation. In Masonry, the eye usually has a semicircular glory emanation below it, or is enclosed by a triangle or pyramid. In Paul, we see both. The semicircular glory below the eye is formed by his semicircular lower eyelashes, complete with rays. The pyramid's upper lines are formed by his high bending eyebrow, forming the modern eye of illumination, which also resembles the Eye of Horus, mirrored vertically. The Eye of Paul pyramid, joining text lines to the footnotes, is a blend of the Eye of Paul and the Eye of Horus. Wow. So, yeah, guys, and you look at the picture, again, you have as above, so below with the eyes, and what they represent, what we just went over in the footnotes. Yeah. Okay, guys, I have just a couple more footnotes I would like to touch upon concerning the beetles and the reincarnation, the symbolism of the beetle. So we're actually going to go from the beetle to the phoenix. So let's go over to page 426. And I find this numerology just, again, very cheeky. So you get 426. 4 plus 2 is 6. So then you're left with 2 sixes, right? But 6 plus 6 is 12. And then you get 1 plus 2, 3, which is the most perfect number. It's a number of harmony. It's a number that represents the grand architect as well. What they call it, the master builder. Okay. Figuratively pointing to the phoenix, Paul is said to have died in a blazing car. However, even without that early enrichment, Bernie Taupin recognized Paul's death to Rise and William as another phoenix reenactment. The divine creature based on the Benu is an Egyptian bird embodiment of the sun god Ra. To occultists, the phoenix also represents Lucifer, the light bearer, who was cast down to the earth only to rise again. Rise, rise. Do you hear the word rise? It's used a lot as well. In Paulism, Paul's death, soul transmigration, and new heights through William is the reenactment of the Osiris-Horus story that, as the phoenix, has occurred many times throughout history. Oh, again, going back to the scarab beetle. It is a repeating life cycle, right? A reincarnation. And whew. Okay, guys. Let's go to the very last footnote that I have for us to read. Looking at page 594. And again, the numerology, right? So you do 5 plus 9 plus 4, you get 14 plus 4. That's how I added it up. 14 plus 4 is 18. 18 1 plus 8 is 9. Oh, Mr. McCartney, number 9, number 9, number 9. So we started with the number 6, right? Talking about Billy. And now we're going to end with the number 9, talking about Paul. So let's look at the footnote on this page. John internalized how the global elite had successfully used him, manufacturing Beatlemania as a calculated step towards breaking down order everywhere to create a new global society under their own leadership. He saw how his own rigged success contributed to the plan to control society through music and hero worship as a step toward generating enough anarchy and chaos to eventually accumulate in mankind demanding a new world order. John said, "Our society is run by insane people for insane objectives. I think we're being run by maniacs for maniacal ends, and I think I'm liable to be put away as insane for expressing that. That's what's insane about it," unquote. Typical of how the illuminated carry out their work, John was told how the Beatles would be used. All was by consent. Nevertheless, typical of why such societies succeed even after giving advance notice. The weight and far-reaching implications of each operation cannot be comprehended by those who cannot fathom the bigger picture. Also typical, the most information is given to those with the most to gain from it, making them co-conspirators, not opponents. John and Paul were told that they would be given music and other support to usher in the age of Aquarius. Read that sentence again, guys. John and Paul were told that they would be given music and other support to usher in the age of Aquarius, placing them at the top of the musical pyramid, making them the world's most famous writing team. Oh, it was all a sham. The Beatles, they were told, would endure forever. John later acknowledged, changing the lifestyle and appearance of youth throughout the world didn't just happen. We set out to do it. We knew what we were doing. They had a basic understanding of why they were so generously supported and gladly received what they could without any possibility of comprehending it fully. The weight of it all did not begin to hit John until Paul died. John then became unstable. He lost interest in quality work and would have to quit entirely had he not been controlled by William, Yoko, and heroin. Oh, the unholy trinity. William, Yoko, and heroin. Oh my gosh. Okay, guys, so I just wanted to point out these footnotes in relation to the beautiful scarab beetle. We can see why the name the Beatles is so very, very appropriate for these 7 lads, right? Billy tells us that there were 7 Beatles total, and John and George were the only original members of the band. Pretty crazy. But, look, 55 years later, people are still listening. My own child, and it's probably because of my influence, has discovered the Beatles. They had such an impact, and you ask any musician out there, they will tell you that the Beatles, their music and culture would not be what it is today without the Beatles' presence in our world. They created the counterculture mindset, the rebellious mindset, right? The rebellion of Lucifer, spreading that spirit throughout the world, constantly, you know, rolling up that dung ball and pushing it across the, across the sky, only for more life and more spirit to come out because of it. It's very existential. It's very, even Jung, Carl Jung pulled out the Scarab beetle in his talks about alchemy. It is the greatest representation of the transmigration of the soul is the Scarab beetle. And Billy is the gold winged scarab, right? Gold because he is number one. They Long John Silver, or what was it? Their band with Tony Sheridan, they were called the Silver Beatles. Well, Billy is the gold beetle. So just like he said, at the very end on page 666, he signed off the book with that title. All the best to those who love my memoirs and to those who don't. With love from your Scarab, the gold-winged beetle. Billy, you are the winged beetle. The beetle with phony foreign wings attached to him that is going to fly up to Capri and guarantee the transmigration of the soul. So where does Paul's soul go when Billy passes? That's what I want to know. Where does Billy's soul go when he passes? Are they going to be moved into another physical representation? Or will it be many, many years before we see a sort of another reincarnation of the Osiris Horus avatar? These are thoughts that plague me at night. Not really, but they are thoughts that I think about. And if you guys have any comments on this video, I know it's been kind of quite long. I'm looking down at the time now. But I just wanted to get that information out. It's important. And it is, again, Confucius said, we speak in signs and symbols. That is the language of reality. And the more you know, the more you grow. Do, 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 do. All right, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. I had fun researching it. I will leave links to the online sources I found. And yeah, it's very fascinating that such a deep concept of soul transmigration and alchemy are being paralleled with a rock and roll band. It's just like, ooh, talk about opposites, right? All right, guys, that's all I have. Please leave your comments below. Let me know what you think. And please don't forget to hit that smash that like button, please. And leave a comment. It helps my algorithm. It helps my videos get out to more people. So I really do appreciate all of your guys' time, and I wish you the best. So until we meet again, which probably I'll sit down with the cards sometime this weekend, and we'll do the reading that was intended to be done on the 13th. We'll get there, guys, slowly but surely. Okie dokie, artichoke, I am done. So until the next one, stay safe, and I love you all. Bye.